Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian, I'm Ian the Reader, and today I have Box Talks episode 5. If you're new to the channel or you just haven't been keeping up with these videos, in this series on my channel, I discuss Book of the Month, which is such a great book subscription box that is so affordable, has so many great options. You get 5 choices on the Book of the Month picks every month. They're all new releases, all really great books, and you can pick a book, or you can pick 2 books or 3 books, or you can skip that month if you don't want to and you won't be charged. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really great subscription box. I'll leave a link down below if you're interested in just looking into it, or if you want to get your first month at a discounted price, you can use my link down below to get that. But in this series, I talk about Book of the Month in a lot of different ways. Sometimes I do prediction videos talking about what books I think will be in the next box, or I do deep dive videos talking about the selections for each month, or I even did like a reading vlog in December where I read all 5 of the Book of the Year nominees from Book of the Month in like a week and a half, and it was a great experience. If you haven't seen that video, you should totally go watch it because I had a blast making that one. But anyway, this month I did decide to go ahead and skip the deep dive of the January picks just because by the time I had time to like really dig into them and get around to filming, it's already like almost halfway through the month, and I just thought, you know, I'll just go ahead and skip this month. But the plan is every month to do a deep dive of the picks and to do a predictions for the following month, and that's what this video is. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my predictions for what books I think will be in the February Book of the Month box. So there were a lot of books to choose from in January. Not as many in my opinion in February. January was like a stacked month. February, I found some titles that come out in February that I think could be, but obviously, you know, with Book of the Month, if you've been keeping up with their titles, sometimes they do titles that release the month before, sometimes they do books that release the month of, and sometimes they even go so far as to reach into the upcoming month for that specific Book of the Month. So for example, in February, we could have books that came out in January, or in February, or in March even, because they really go a lot of different places in regard to when the books come out. They love doing early releases, and I think that's awesome. But like I was saying, for February, there weren't as many titles that I thought would be Book of the Month picks. I could be wrong, obviously, but in my research, I found a lot of great books coming out around like March 1st, which feels like a good option because like with early releases, they don't like to do them too far in advance, but March 1st is like the very beginning of March, so I could definitely see a lot of those being selected for February. Like I usually do, I'm going to head and go with 3 picks for each genre, and I'm going to go ahead and divide like the video into chapters by genre. That way, if you're only interested in certain genres, you can go ahead and find those rather than having to sit through romance if you're not a romance reader to get to the historical fiction. Yeah, you can just look at the chapters down below, totally up to you. Or you can watch the whole thing because, you know, this is always fun. And you may find a book that's outside of your genre comfort zone that sounds really interesting, so, you know, do your thing. Before I get started, make sure you like this video, it helps a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos because I post every Tuesday and Friday and sometimes on other days, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and begin with mystery thriller. I always love talking about the mystery thriller ones because there are just so many great mystery thriller selections from Book of the Month. I'm always excited to see what they pick. For February, I think there is a shoo-in my personal opinion, to the point that if they don't pick this book, I'll be a little bit bummed, but I did find some other great options as well. So first off, let's go ahead and talk about the first book, which is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. If you have not read Lucy Foley, you are missing out. I read her book, The Guest List, in a reading vlog that I did back in November, and it was so good. It was like a 4.5 star for me, which is really great, and I just had like a blast with it. It was so much fun, so unpredictable. I loved the format of it, and The Paris Apartment, her newest book, sounds absolutely amazing. Just like I did in the last Book of the Month predictions video, I'm not gonna read the whole summary that's available on Goodreads because that would make this the longest video ever, and I don't wanna do that. But I am going to read the brief beginning portion if they have one. That way you kind of get an idea for what the book is about, and I will link down below the Goodreads page so you can read the full description if you would like. You know, I said that, but the first book that I selected doesn't have like a mini summary, so I guess you just have to read the whole thing. So here is what The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley is about. Jess needs a fresh start. She's broke and alone, and she's just left her job under less than ideal circumstances. Her half-brother Ben didn't sound thrilled when she asked if she could crash with him for a bit. But he didn't say no, and surely everything will look better from Paris. Only when she shows up to find a very nice apartment, could Ben really have afforded this? He's not there. The longer Ben stays missing, the more Jess starts to dig into her brother's situation, and the more questions she has. Ben's neighbors are an eclectic bunch and not particularly friendly. Jess may have come to Paris to escape her past, but it's starting to look like it's Ben's future that's in question. The socialite, the nice guy, the alcoholic, the girl on the verge, the concierge. Everyone's a neighbor, everyone's a suspect, and everyone knows something they're not telling. So definitely gives off similar vibes to the guest list in that you have different perspectives that are being told, and they each kind of have a different role to play in the scenario that's going on. But it sounds very mysterious. It sounds like it has a really good sense of atmosphere. I like that it's set in Paris. That's kind of cool. And yeah, I'm totally down for this book. I really hope that it is the selection. A little bit more about the book. It does have a 3.85 on Goodreads right now, which is not spectacular, and I believe the guest list had a higher rating. However, it's not a bad score by any means, and it could go up when it comes out. It could go down, who knows? But I want to read it and find out. The official release date for this is February 22nd, so it would be a slightly early release, but not crazy early. And I think because of the fact that they did feature the guest list in Book of the Month in 2019 or 2020, I think it was 2020, I can definitely see them picking this book. It is also 320 pages, which is the perfect length for a Book of the Month book, and I think it is really a great option for Book of the Month to go with for February. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the second book that I think could be the mystery or thriller selection for Book of the Month in February, and that is Fake by Erica Katz. Now, this is a book that I hadn't heard about before doing my research, but it sounds really interesting. Here's the short description. From the author of The Boys' Club, a gripping novel set in the high-stakes world of art forgery that moves across the globe from the trendy art galleries of Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood to the high-flying international art fairs of Hong Kong. Oh, that sounds like so much fun. I love the whole art forgery aspect of it, and I like that it goes a lot of different places. You have really big cities like Manhattan, but you also get Hong Kong. I think that is so cool. This sounds really great, really thrilling, but also just like a really cool experience to read. So yeah, I'm hopeful for this one. This one does come out February 22nd as well, so again, a little bit of an early release, and it's 320 pages. Wait a minute. Oh my gosh, that's so weird, because the Paris apartment is also 320 pages. Maybe that's just like their fill-in because they don't know how many pages it actually is, but same release date, same page count. It's pretty wild. The Goodreads score for Fake is a 4.16, which is not bad. This one would be a really interesting pick, and I'd be totally happy if Fake was chosen. My third mystery thriller prediction is This Might Hurt by Stephanie Roble. Maybe that's how you say her name. I don't know. You can see it on the cover and tell me how to pronounce it, but this one sounds really interesting. It is from the author of Darling Rose Gold, which is a pretty popular and kind of trendy book that I've seen around Instagram and things like that. But here's a short description. From the USA Today best-selling and Edgar-nominated author of Darling Rose Gold comes a dark, thrilling novel about two sisters, one trapped in the clutches of a cult, the other in a web of her own lies. Ooh, okay, so this sounds really kind of dark. It sounds definitely like a little bit more, I don't know, intense of a situation than the other two. The other two seem a little bit more on the lighthearted side. Not like lighthearted because there's like murder and stuff, but you know, the cult aspect of this is definitely pretty creepy. So I think this could be really good. I like the cover of this one a lot. So we'll see. The Goodreads rating for this one is a 3.71. It only has 235 ratings, which is not a small number, but not a big number. So it could go up or down, obviously. It comes in at 336 pages, and the official release date is, again, February 22nd. That's a big day in publishing, apparently. Alright, so those are my 3 mystery thriller predictions. Let's go ahead and move on to historical fiction. First up, we have On a Night of 1,000 Stars by Andrea Yarura Clark. I hope I said that correctly. This book is getting a lot of really good reviews. Right now it has a 4.44 on Goodreads, which is spectacular. The concept of this book, or like the plot summary, sounds really interesting as well. I'm going to go ahead and read the short description. In this moving emotional narrative of love and resilience, a young couple confronts the start of Argentina's dirty war in the 1970s and a daughter's search for truth 20 years later. So this seems like a very powerful and impactful and moving book. I love that it has 2 different storylines in regard to the timelines of it, that there's the 1970s and there's also the 20 years later, I guess in the 1990s at some point, which is really cool. I love both of those times. I love reading about both of those times, and so I think that could be really interesting. But like I said, the reviews that are out, there actually aren't a ton. I was wrong before. There aren't a ton of reviews, but they are all really positive. So I'd be really interested to see if this one is the Book of the Month pick. It does have a 352 page count, and it comes out March 1st. So again, an early release, but that's not a problem. Another thing to note is that this is a debut novel, and you know, Book of the Month loves featuring debut novels and debut authors, and so I could definitely see this one being selected. Next up, we have Shadows of Pecan Hollow. This one also has a really high Goodreads score with a 4.42. Only 45 ratings again, but it does sound really awesome, and I'm definitely interested in this one. The short description is, set in 1970s and 90s East Texas, Shadows of Pecan Hollow is a literary debut about a scrappy young woman and the partner in crime she can't escape from. Perfect for readers of Where the Crawdads Sing and Valentine. So, Interesting that this one is also set in the 70s and 90s. But moving on from that, I love that it's compared to Where the Crawdads Sing, which is an amazing book, and Valentine, which was a previous Book of the Month selection back in 2020. I enjoyed both of those books, and so I'd be really happy with this one, and it sounds just really interesting, to be honest. It is by Carolyn Frost. It comes in at 416 pages, so it's a little long, but not like crazy long. They'll just have that little 400 plus page sticker on the book, or on like the page for the book, and it comes out February 8th. So this one does have an earlier release date, so that makes me feel more inclined towards it versus the other one, but I can definitely see either one of those being the historical fiction selection for February. And my last historical fiction prediction for February is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. Now this one is probably likely, if I had to say. I don't know necessarily, it might be an add-on, but I would be surprised if it's not featured, because Ruta Sepetys has actually been featured 2 other times in Book of the Month. The first of those being Salt of the Sea, I believe. It's a YA book, and then the other one being, man, I can't even tell you what it's called. Let me look it up real quick. The Fountains of Silence is the other book that was featured in Book of the Month by Ruta Sepetys. So yeah, I can definitely see this one being featured. I'd be surprised if it wasn't an add-on or a main pick, but I think it might be an add-on over the main pick. So the short description is Romania, 1989. Communist regimes are crumbling across Europe. 17-year-old Christian Florusco dreams of becoming a writer, but Romanians aren't free to dream. They are bound by rules and force. This sounds really powerful, really interesting, and also I love the way that Ruta Sepetys tells different kinds of stories with different kinds of characters, and she explores so many different aspects of history, going to different countries, going to different times, and things like that. I'm really interested in this book, and I think it would be awesome if it was a selection. It also has a 4.41 on Goodreads with 142 ratings. Apparently historical fiction is just awesome right now in February. The release date for this one is February 1st, so it has the perfect release date, and it is 336 pages. This one can definitely be featured in February, in my opinion. What the heck? Did the lighting change? That's weird and random, and totally not because I had to stop filming for hours and I'm just now getting to start again. All right, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about the literary / contemporary selections that I have chosen as my predictions. Now, with these, obviously, they can be categorized as literary or contemporary dependent upon the specifics of the book. I just like to mesh these together because I honestly have a hard time differentiating between the two. And then in addition to that, with some of these, they can also be applied to different genres as well as literary fiction, but I really kind of primarily see them as literary contemporary. For example, some of them, one in particular has like magical realism in it, and sometimes Book of the Month categorizes that as its own genre, despite the fact that it kind of leans into a literary or contemporary genre with magical realism elements in it. Just something to keep in mind. But the first book that I wanted to talk about is When We Were Birds by Ayanna Lloyd Banwo. So this book sounds super interesting, and I'm really excited to read it regardless of whether or not it ends up being a Book of the Month pick. I love the cover, I love the concept, I love that it's getting really great reviews and things like that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and read the short description. It says, a mythic love story set in Trinidad and Tobago, Ayanna Lloyd Banwo's radiant debut introduces 2 unforgettable outsiders brought together by their connection with the dead. So that sounds really interesting. I think it could be really compelling and have a really interesting edge to it that, you know, sets it apart from other books. And then in addition to that, I like the setting of it. I think it's very unique. I haven't really read stories that are set in those 2 places. And I like that it's a love story as well. So this one, like I said, is a fiction, more like literary fiction, but it does have magical realism elements, so just something to keep in mind when going into it. Currently, it has a 4.23 on Goodreads with 52 ratings, so not a lot, but again, you know, it's really good so far. This is a debut novel, and then it does release on March 15th. So the reason that I'm including this one on February is because there are instances when there are kind of like books that get good reviews that are debuts where they will release them significantly early, so it would be a month and a half early-ish, but it's not outrageous. I think it could definitely happen. For example, A Flicker in the Dark was a pick for December, and it just came out on like the 11th. So, you know, these things happen, and so I think that that could make a lot of sense. I think this could be a good pick for February, and I would really be happy if it was. It is 304 pages, so it's a great length, And yeah, I think it could happen. Next up is another one that could also be categorized in a different genre, but it does give me primarily like literary fiction vibes, and that is The End of Getting Lost by Robin Kerman. Now this is one that the Goodreads reviews so far are not spectacular, but I think it really could change, and I think it does sound very interesting. Currently it has a 3.49, and the description on Goodreads says, a psychologically suspenseful, cunning love story following a young dancer unable to recall the last year of her life after suffering a head injury on her honeymoon, revealing an intimate portrait of love's power as well as its danger. So the reason that I'm not categorizing this necessarily in like the mystery thriller aspect is because it isn't really like a thriller. It has like a suspenseful angle to it and like a psychological suspense angle to it, but it doesn't seem like it's focused on like the thrilling aspect of it or like building tension and suspense and things like that. It seems more that there are questions and unanswered aspects of the storyline that will be resolved throughout the story, but it's primarily focused on the love story and the examination of a relationship and things like that, and that definitely seems to be more the focus rather than the actual like thrilling aspects of it. This book does release on February 15th, so it has a great release date for the February Book of the Month box, and it comes in at 288 pages. This is not a debut novel, however, it would be the author's first feature in Book of the Month. And my third and final pick for the literary contemporary genre is Listening Still by Anne Griffin. Now, Anne Griffin is popular for her book When All Is Said, which I've heard a lot of really good things about, and I've been wanting to pick up one of her books, so I think it'd be really great if this book was featured in the February Book of the Month box. The short description says, from the best-selling author of When All Is Said comes a delicious new novel about a young woman who can hear the dead, a talent which is both a gift and a curse. So this is a book that definitely has, again, like that magical realism element, but it seems to be more focused on her and kind of like a coming-of-age story and just her experience as an individual with this angle of it that is magical realism. So I'm definitely into that. I think it could be really good. I think it definitely leans more towards like contemporary rather than like literary fiction, but it seems really interesting. I'm definitely drawn to it. The page count on this one is 352 pages and it comes out March 1st. The current Goodreads score for this book is a 3.76, which is not bad by any means, and it does have 658 ratings, so that's a pretty significant amount. All right, let's go ahead and move on into the sci-fi and fantasy selections that I have chosen now. Honestly, Book of the Month doesn't always pick sci-fi or fantasy, so I kind of had a question in my head about whether or not I even wanted to discuss this, but personally, I really love fantasy books and sci-fi books, and so I always look forward to the times when they feature them, and so anytime there are ones that are on my radar that I think they could pick, I go ahead and want to talk about them anyway. So, let's go ahead and jump into those. The first one is one that I feel like is primarily magical realism, but it definitely leans into the fantasy aspect as well as the, like literary contemporary fiction. So it balances that fine line. But that book is The Boy with the Bird in His Chest by M. Lund. Now this is a book that I've seen quite a bit of buzz for. I really enjoy the cover of it and I like the colors on there, but in addition to that, the synopsis sounds really interesting. Though Owen Tanner has never met anyone else who has a chatty bird in their chest, medical forums would call him a terror. From the moment Gale emerged between Owen's ribs, his mother knew that she had to hide him away from the world. After a decade spent in hiding, Owen takes a brazen trip outdoors in the middle of a forest fire and his life is upended forever. This sounds really amazing. It sounds really moving. It sounds like you really delve into like the boy's struggles with this thing that he has. It's definitely like a coming of age story, it seems like, but it has this very unique magical realism element that I think is so interesting and I would love to read about. This has a 4.05 on Goodreads so far. Not a ton of ratings, again, because it hasn't come out yet, but it comes in at 320 pages and the release date is February 15th. I think this would be honestly like a shoo-in for Book of the Month. It seems right up a lot of readers' alleys. I think it has a lot of things going for it that are very interesting and unique, and I think it would be a great pick for Book of the Month. Next up, we have a science fiction pick that has been getting a lot of buzz, and that is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. This sounds so good. I haven't seen a science fiction pick from Book of the Month in quite a while, and I think this would be a great one to have. So the short description on Goodreads says, Titanic meets The Shining. Let's just stop there and appreciate that for a second. Titanic meets The Shining in S.A. Barnes' Dead Silence, a sci-fi horror novel in which a woman and her crew board a decades-lost luxury cruiser and find the wreckage of a nightmare that hasn't yet ended. A ghost ship, a salvage crew, unspeakable horrors. Oh man, that sounds so good. This sounds like right up my alley. I love that it is like science fiction, but it's also horror. We haven't had a horror book from Book of the Month in quite a while as well. I don't think they're gonna pick this book, but I'd be so happy if they did. I think it would be great. Like I said, it has been getting quite a bit of buzz. It currently has a 4.30 on Goodreads, which is exceptional. It comes in at 352 pages, which is great because, you know, with science fiction and fantasy, they tend to run on the longer side. And so it'd be really nice to have this book featured because it is a buzzy, well-reviewed science fiction horror story that is well within the page count. And the release date for this is February 8th. So I'd be very happy if this was picked. And the final one that I wanted to talk about for fantasy and science fiction is The Paradox Hotel by Rob Hart. This sounds really interesting as well. Honestly, like the fantasy sci-fi picks that I found for the month of February, I want to read regardless. All three of them. I think they sound great. But anyway, this is the short description from Goodreads. It says, a locked room murder mystery set in a hotel for time travelers in which a detective must solve an impossible crime even as her own sanity crumbles, from the author of The Warehouse. So that sounds incredible. I love that it's like a mystery thriller, but with like a really interesting science fiction like aspect to it, with like these a hotel for time travelers. Like, that is so cool. And to be honest, I think it's really interesting. I think it's very unique, and I like that it is a female detective at the center of it. I think that's really awesome. I love reading about female detectives, and yeah, this sounds really great. It comes in at 336 pages, and the release date is February 22nd. So this would be a great one as well. I think the cover is very book of the monthy. You can definitely see that little box in the corner there. And yeah, I'd be really happy with this one. It currently has a 3.85 on Goodreads, which is just fine. And yeah, I'm down for a science fiction mystery. I'd love it. And lastly, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the romance category. I thought about doing like a nonfiction one as well, because I feel like they have been really leaning into nonfiction, especially like in their add-ons. To be honest, I don't read a lot of nonfiction or know about a lot of nonfiction. I did a little bit of research, but I have such a hard time determining which books they're going to select for nonfiction, so I can't really help you there. But if you have some great nonfiction ideas and predictions, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to look into those. Getting back to romance, let's talk about my 3 predictions for this category. The first of those is The Ark, and this is one that I feel like kind of leans out of romance a little bit into more of like contemporary, but it definitely has a romance angle that is at the focus. The Ark by Tori Henwood Hohen seems really interesting. It says, for fans of Taylor Jenkins Reid, Sally Rooney, and Rebecca Searle, The Ark is a smart, high-concept love story that asks, is it possible to optimize our most intimate relationships? So this seems like a romance that definitely has an interesting angle to it, and is definitely more focused on like the contemporary aspect rather than just the popcorn romance kind of aspect of it, which is just fine. I enjoy that from time to time, but I think this would be a really interesting pick. Currently it has a 3.73 on Goodreads. It comes in at 352 pages, and the release date is February 8th. Next up, we have A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. This is the first book in an upcoming contemporary romance series. And the Goodreads description says, Harper is anxiously awaiting placement into a top oral surgery residency program when she crashes, literally, into Dan. Harper would rather endure a Novocaine-free root canal than face any distractions, even one this adorable. And it goes from there. I definitely think this could be a shoe-in for Book of the Month's romance category for the month of February. It has really great reviews so far. It has 300 reviews already with a 4.23, so it's definitely being well received, and I like that it's the first in a romance series, because they do like to do that. Like, they'll feature like contemporary romance like books throughout the series as they come out, and this would be a great one to start with. The page count on this one is 336, and the release date is March 1st. So it would be a great early release. I think it could definitely be the romance pick for February. And lastly, in the romance category, I have Good Girl Complex, an Avalon Bay novel. Now, I'm not sure, is this like part of a series? I don't think it is. I think it's on its own, even though it says an Avalon Bay novel. I'm not sure if it's related to others or not, but it definitely stands on its own. This book is by Elle Kennedy, and the Goodreads description says, Mackenzie, Mac Cabot, is a people pleaser. Her demanding parents, her prep school friends, her longtime boyfriend. It's exhausting, really, always following the rules. Unlike most 20-year-olds, all she really wants to do is focus on growing her internet business, but first she must get a college degree at her parents' insistence. That means moving to the beachside town of Avalon Bay, a community made up of local and the wealthy students of Garnet College. Max had plenty of practice suppressing her wilder impulses, but when she meets local bad boy Cooper Hartley, that ability is suddenly tested. Cooper is rough around the edges, raw, candid, a threat to her ordered existence. Their friendship soon becomes the realest thing in her life. Despite his disdain for the trust fund kids he sees coming and going from his town, Cooper soon realizes Mac isn't just another rich clone and falls for her hard. But as Mac finally starts feeling accepted by Cooper and his friends, the secret he's been keeping from her threatens the only place she's ever felt at home. So personally, I feel like that description, one, they didn't have like a short description of it, so I had to read the whole thing, but I feel like it gives away a lot, personally. But whatever. I mean, I guess you don't know what the secret is, but this currently has a 3.85 on Goodreads. It has 368 pages, and the release date is February 1st, so it has the perfect release date for the February box. And yeah, I think it could definitely be selected. So those are all of my genre predictions, my 3 for each genre. Now I'm going to select my actual predictions on which ones I think will be featured for each genre if they are chosen to be featured as a genre. Whatever, you know what I mean. So for mystery thriller, I do believe that it's going to be The Paris Apartment. I think that people will be a bit let down if it's not, especially because of the fact that the guest list was so well received. It was a finalist for Book of the Year in the year it came out, and yeah, The Paris Apartment just seems like a shoo-in. If we don't get it selected as a main pick, I feel like it'll definitely be an add-on. The only thing that I think could hold it back from it is the fact that it doesn't come out until the 22nd of February, and lately they've been doing like extra add-on drops on the actual day of like the release date of a book if it's like a very popular or like anticipated release. So maybe, but I think this one could be chosen for February. For historical fiction, I am going to go with I Must Betray You by Rudis Apetis. Personally, if I could choose, I think I would want Shadows of Pecan Hollow, and that actually might be the better pick because of the fact that it's a debut author. But I think that the Rudis Apetis one will be featured, honestly. It seems like it could be a shoo-in. I'd be happier if it's Shadows of Pecan Hollow, but I'll be happy with I Must Betray You as well. For literary contemporary, I'm gonna go with When We Were Birds. It seems like it could be a really good fit. It's a debut, it has really good reviews, it is multicultural, it is definitely got interesting aspects to it with the magical realism thing going on there, and yeah, I would definitely enjoy this as a literary contemporary pick. If we do get a science fiction or fantasy selection this month, I think it might be The Paradox Hotel. It seems very approachable for a science fiction story because it has the mystery thriller aspect to it, so I think it could be selected. If I had my choice, it would be Dead Silence because I think that sounds so awesome, but I do think it is ultimately, if we get a science fiction fantasy, because we don't get one every month, I think it could be The Paradox Hotel. And for romance, I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be A Brush with Love. I feel like this really is a shoo-in. I think it has great reviews. It's the start to a series. It's definitely got one of those trendy contemporary romance covers, and it just makes sense to be chosen as a contemporary romance pick. However, maybe they will actually include that Colleen Hoover that I've been predicting for the last 2 months. Who knows? We'll see. But that is all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed watching my predictions and watching me talk about Book of the Month. I love discussing these books with you, finding new titles to get excited about, and also just making my personal predictions. I've always wanted to do like this kind of thing because I loved reading other people's predictions, and I've really enjoyed making these videos. But like I said, I do post lots of other content. I do top 10 lists, I do book reviews, I do tons of stuff like that, so make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of my videos, because I'm great, right? Thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate all of your time and attention, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!